Unexpectedly, only one little girl came forward. Her whisper revealed, "You're my amazing daddy." The science fair buzzed around Jake Thompson like a fluorescent cloud, filled with the voices of parents discussing the funding of projects and professors exchanging casual pleasantries. Yet, amid all that chatter, one voice broke through, Lily S. He glanced over at her, small and bright-haired, her spirit shimmering even in the dreary gymnasium. But could this small girl, little more than a whisper in a competitive arena, compete against the polished works of wealthier classmates? Jake gripped the edges of the table behind him. Nerves raised a chill along his spine. Feeling out of place among designer jackets and chatter that felt foreign, Jake thought back to all the late nights spent in his garage, wiping grease from his hands, dreaming of a life that felt more than 10 steps away. He poured everything into his daughter, yet part of him feared that might not be enough. The world was so unkind here, so quick to dismiss potential coated in grime. Watching the judges flit from one project to the next only fed that fear, twisting it into a painful knot. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Jake's heartbeat intensified, a pounding rhythm that screamed both pride and fear with every passing second. Faced with the judge's dismissive glances and Lily's biting disappointment, he wanted to explode, to shout that she deserved more than this skin-deep judgment. But what could he do? He could only stand there, a lone mechanic suffocated by class barriers, watching as they disregarded his daughter's brilliance. Suddenly, she stood up, and the world around him retreated. "You're my amazing daddy," she proclaimed. It was simple, yet it roared with the weight of their shared history, igniting a fire he thought had sputtered out. She wasn't embarrassed. In fact, she was standing against them all, against the pressures dictated by money and status, and he could feel every heart in the room skip an anxious beat. But with that spark came a cloud of doubt. Who was he to help her? He spent days repairing broken engines while everyone else moved on to Ivy League dreams. But Lily believed in him, and that thought twisted around his heart like a vice. What if he stumbled? What if they failed? His inner turmoil became a raging storm, the yearning for her to be proud standing against a fear of inadequacy that cut deeper than any engine wrench could reach. What if the presentation fell flat? The memory of being overlooked, someone's son who didn't have the degrees or connections, pulsed with dread through his veins. He pushed the fear aside as they prepared in quiet urgency. Every scrap of metal he scavenged, transforming it into something greater. With every turn of the wrench, Jake experienced a moment of clarity, but then self-doubt clawed back, feral and loud. Would this be enough to change the narrative, to carve a place for Lily in a world that seemed set against them? As they moved toward the stage, with time slipping away like the grease on his fingers, Jake felt the weight of the evening brush against his shoulders, raising the stakes higher than he could bear. As Jake stepped onto the stage, the harsh lights dazzled him, forcing him to squint and releasing a cascade of emotions he struggled to contain. The audience, a sea of faces, ranged from skeptical parents to expectant judges, all of whom seemed to radiate a mixture of judgment and indifference. Each pair of eyes felt like an anchor, dragging him down, while Lily stood beside him, a beacon of unwavering support. Take a deep breath, he reminded himself, gripping the papers in his hands. Instinctively, he glanced at Lily, who seemed blissfully unaware of the weight of the moment. Her eyes sparkled with unfiltered excitement, the innocence of childhood granting her an unshakable confidence. In that instant, something began to shift within Jake. The noise of self-doubt ebbed, replaced by the clarity of purpose. This was no longer about him. It was about Lily and the vision they shared. "Today, we're presenting our project," he began, the tremor in his voice quickly evolving into a steady cadence as he introduced their invention, a solar-powered water sterilizer crafted from discarded machinery. With each word, Jake felt a flicker of his passion igniting, urging him to share every intricate detail of their design, how they had sourced materials, infused creativity, and utilized engineering principles often neglected by the affluent. Lily chimed in to demonstrate its functionality, her excitement contagious as she operated their prototype. Watching her embody confidence, Jake realized that they had not merely built an invention. They had crafted a labor of love, a tangible representation of resilience. The audience shifted slightly, intrigued as the sterilizer emitted steam, a small but dramatic display of their hard work paying off. But just as he felt the tide beginning to turn, the head judge leaned forward, skepticism veiling his expression. Impressive, but can you explain how this can outperform existing commercial solutions? Are you considering scalability? The cascade of doubt rushed back in, threatening to suffocate the brief moment of triumph. Was he prepared to answer the tough questions? Jake paused, the pit of his stomach tightening. Thoughts raced faster than he could process. Did he really believe in their creation? Was this a frivolous endeavor expected to crumble under scrutiny? As a mechanic, I've built things that were meant for people, not profit, Jake replied, focusing on the honesty woven within his narrative. Scalability is rooted in understanding the community's needs. We've repurposed what others deemed useless to create something that could genuinely help, and that's what matters most. The honesty of his statement hung in the air, challenging the status quo with a raw truth that felt almost revolutionary. Maybe it wasn't about competing with the polished inventions, but about carving out a unique space through authenticity. With each challenge Jake faced, a fire within him reignited. He addressed the audience directly now, each word bouncing confidently from his lips. We're not here to win against wealthy projects, but to show that innovation doesn't exist solely in academia or affluence. It thrives in the heart of those determined to impact the world from the ground up. The handful of nods and murmurs of interest echoed through the crowd. For a fleeting moment, anxiety slipped away, replaced by a sense of empowerment that felt almost mystical. In that swirl of inspiration, Jake felt a profound connection, not only with his daughter, but with the entire room. How ideas, when fueled by purpose and passion, could upwardly spiral beyond expectation. As they wrapped up their presentation, Jake looked at Lily. She beamed back at him with pride. It didn't matter whether they won or lost. What they had laid bare was a piece of themselves, and for Jake, that was the victory he had yearned for. But as they stepped down from the stage, a look from one of the judges cast a shadow over Jake's momentary triumph. Interesting concept, the judge said, voice dripping with skepticism. But mechanics alone won't get you far. Keep your day job. Those words sliced through him like glass, sharp and unforgiving. In that instant, doubts surged again, almost overwhelming. Who was he kidding? Was this just a pipe dream? In the throes of that moment, as he watched Lily's hopeful face turn somber, Jake understood that the real challenge had only just begun. The ascent would be fraught with obstacles, a crucible testing every ounce of resolve he possessed. As the weight of that realization settled over him, a single question echoed firmly in his mind. How far would he go to transform hope into reality for his daughter? In pursuit of that answer, he could sense that life was about to present him with trials he never anticipated. The moment felt like a slap, the judge's words lingering in the air, clinging to Jake like a heavy fog. Each step away from the stage felt loaded with uncertainty as he fought to keep his composure in front of Lily. She glanced up at him, and in her innocent eyes, he saw the slightest flicker of concern mingled with hope. For her, he had to be the courageous father, the man who could turn dreams into reality. Dad, you were awesome. She bounced on her toes, her joy a stark contrast to the disheartening remarks that echoed in his head. But inside him, doubt twisted uncomfortably. Was he really capable of making this work? He knew he had a choice. He could either succumb to that suffocating skepticism or push back with renewed determination. He gazed down at Lily, taking in her unwavering faith in him. Thanks, kiddo. I couldn't have done this without you, he managed, but the words felt brittled. In the days following their presentation, Jake's thoughts centered around their project and the judge's dismissal. He headed to his garage, the place where the world had narrowed down to pieces of metal, tools, and boundless creativity. He had poured countless hours into transforming old machinery into something new, but now the challenge felt monumental. Would he ever be able to scale this, or was he simply lost in a dream? The cluttered space mirrored his internal chaos. every tool and part jumbled together, just like the thoughts racing through his mind. He took a deep breath, focusing on how to enhance their design. He realized that scaling their sterilizer didn't purely rely on efficiency, it was also about community engagement. He could reach out, foster relationships, and build something bigger than himself. That night, Jake sat at the kitchen table with a legal pad, scribbling ideas late into the evening. He started mapping out a plan: how to pilot their prototype in a nearby community, collect feedback, and collaborate with local environmental groups. This wasn't merely about creating a marketable product, but about making an impact. He meticulously noted potential resources, like local organizations that often worked to promote sustainability. What if he approached them for support? Could he draw on their networks to garner interest and insights? The prospect ignited a flicker of excitement within him, but self-doubt would not let go easily. Questions seeped in. What if he failed? What if he couldn't secure the support he hoped for? But then, he caught a glimpse of Lily drawing pictures at the dining room table, illustrations of their sterilizer in vibrant colors. She would occasionally glance up with unwavering faith, as though his very ambition fueled the sunshine in her world. Okay, Jake, you can't let her down, he grumbled to himself, already feeling the tug of responsibility deep within his core. He plowed through the night, detailing a strategy, drafting potential pitches while keeping her spirit at the forefront of his thoughts. Days passed, and Jake felt an unfamiliar exhilaration build within him. The path wasn't clear, but the chaos felt purposeful. He sent out emails and initiated phone calls, reaching out to local NGOs and environmental clubs, pitching the benefits of their solar sterilizer, and garnering responses that danced between intrigue and skepticism. One afternoon, as he took a break in the middle of a call, the doorbell rang. To his surprise, it was Jessica, an acquaintance from his old mechanic days, a fierce advocate for green initiatives. "I heard about your project from a mutual friend," she said, eyes sparkling with curiosity. "I'm intrigued by the concept. Mind if I check it out?" A rush of adrenaline coursed through Jake. This was the moment he had been yearning for, a chance to showcase not just the mechanics, but the story behind the creation. As they moved to the garage, he felt anticipation swell within him. Would this be the breakthrough he was seeking? But as he stood before Jessica, ready to unveil their project, a wave of doubt threatened to drown him. Could he present their vision authentically, without the shadows of past criticisms haunting him? Today could determine everything, Jake muttered under his breath as he steadied himself. He would need to confront not just the skepticism in others, but also the skepticism deep within him. Taking a deep breath, he turned to her, ready to lay bare their vision and, perhaps, his own vulnerability as well. But little did he know, a struggle lay ahead that would reshape not only their project, but his very understanding of what it means to turn hope into reality. The stakes were about to rise, pushing him to the brink of his courage. What would he reveal not just about the sterilizer, but about himself? The air in the garage felt thick with anticipation, wrapping around Jake as he prepared to show Jessica not just the machine, but his dreams anchored in it. He had envisioned this moment countless times since the judge's words, searching for validation that would affirm he wasn't merely chasing a whimsical idea. "Okay, here it is," he said, his voice wavering slightly despite his attempt at confidence. He stepped aside, gesturing toward the solar sterilizer, its metallic surface glimmering under the dim light. The vision he had carefully crafted began to spill from his lips, the eco-friendly change it could invoke, the people it could help. As he spoke, Jake caught sight of Jessica's eyebrow arching ever so slightly, a fleeting skepticism revealing itself momentarily. No, he reminded himself, this wasn't the time to second-guess. He needed to own his narrative. "This isn't just a machine," Jake continued, leaning into his conviction. "It's part of a larger effort to promote sustainability and access to clean water in our communities. It's about saving lives, not just reducing waste." He watched Jessica closely, noting her interest ignite with each detail. Yet, hidden beneath that professional demeanor, he sensed a flicker of something more. Could it have been interest in him, too, for the journey he was brave enough to undertake? After a thorough look, she started asking questions, digging deeper into the design and functionality. Each query propelled Jake into a mental space he hadn't dared traverse before. How had he managed to get this far despite the darkness of doubt in his mind? Have you thought about potential setbacks? Jessica inquired bluntly, breaking his polished presentation with a jolt of reality. It felt like she had momentarily peeled back a layer, exposing raw vulnerability. Of course, Jake replied, forcing a steadiness into his voice. Every idea comes with risks, but that's how innovation happens. You solve problems that arise. He paused, wrestling with the notion of failure surfacing, just like the doubts he was trying to silence. I'm prepared to face them, because my daughter believes in me. That acknowledgement hung in the air, and as if a switch had flipped, a new layer of purpose intertwined with his ambition. He was no longer struggling alone. He was propelled by a fierce desire to break barriers for someone who saw a hero in him. Jessica nodded slowly, a knowing look crossing her face. I can help you with that. I know people who specialize in prototyping and funding for green technology. If you want to push this further, we could partner up. Jake's heart raced, each beat amplified by the sudden opportunity rising before him. Yet, a familiar dread lingered, creeping back into his consciousness like an unwelcome chill. What if it doesn't work the way we hope? The honesty in his tone laid bare a fundamental fear, a fear of ultimate exposure, of being stripped of the father he wanted to be. Then we learn and adapt, Jessica replied firmly. Success is rarely linear, Jake. The assurance in her voice served as a bridge over trepidation, allowing him to consider transformation instead of defeat. Motivated, Jake nodded, revitalized by a direction that felt more tangible by the moment. All right, he said, a flicker of a smile creeping onto his lips. Let us gather insights and develop a prototype ready to face real-world tests. Together, as they discussed next steps, Jake felt an awakening. He wasn't just a father with a project anymore. He was beginning to solidify his identity as an innovator. He realized that every step forward not only elevated his invention, but reinforced the very essence of his role as a father. Days turned into weeks, and the energy and clarity of purpose propelled Jake into a whirlwind of development. Each move he made held his daughter's image, the smiling face of faith that pushed him past his insecurities. Then, one evening, as he was wiping down the sterilizer after making some adjustments, a thought struck him like a bolt of lightning. What if their project exceeded even his visions? What if it became something far more significant in advocacy, an emblem for other struggling individuals? That night, he began laying out another plan, this time broader in scope, melding his own aspirations with those of allies he hoped to invite into their journey. His mind buzzed, all fears now a bit softened by momentum. Yet lurking beneath this excitement, that nagging doubt began its whisper once more. What if the weight of ambition crushed him? As Jake resigned himself to a restless sleep, the weight of tomorrow loomed heavily. He could either let the fear unravel all he had built or find ways to confront it head-on as he had with Jessica. But as he drifted off, finding some calm amidst the ferocity of choice, the door of his garage creaked. In the dim light, he turned to see Lily standing there, clutching a piece of paper, her eyes glimmering with the earnestness only a child possesses. Dad, I wrote you something. It's about our sterilizer. Can I read it to you? The air in the room felt electric, and suddenly, everything felt poised on the edge of a cliff, awaiting what came next. What would she say, and how would it shape this journey? Jake's breath caught in his throat as Lily approached, her small frame illuminated by the single bulb hanging in the garage. The sincerity in her wide eyes made the hum of his uncertainty fade momentarily, replaced by a warmth that swelled within him. Sure, honey, he managed to say, his voice thicker than he intended. He sat on the edge of the workbench, entranced by the piece of paper she clutched like a treasure. As she began to read, Jake felt layers of tension peel away, exposing the robust desire in her words. The sterilizer will help people get clean water. It's like a superhero for the world, Papa. You're my superhero. Her innocent declaration struck him with the force of reality. Her faith was not just in the machine. It was woven deeply into the fabric of who he was as her father. In that moment, Jake realized his effort transcended merely engineering a device. It became a mission to embody the hero she saw. He couldn't let her down. While she read, Jake's mind flicked through the recent weeks, the late nights spent tweaking designs, mornings spent convening with Jessica about potential partners, the pressure of looming deadlines. This was his chance to carve a new path, Yet doubt had been a constant backdrop. But listening to Lily, the shadows receded. And when it works, she continued, we can help other kids too, just like me. I want to help you make it real. The fervor in her voice sparked an idea within Jake. If Lily believed this, why couldn't he fortify his convictions and turn his project into a campaign for education on clean water? What if they created a platform, not just for this device, but for sharing stories that resonated with countless families facing similar struggles? Lily, that's incredible, Jake interrupted gently as she finished her piece. You have such great ideas. Do you want to help me plan a community event to show people how it works? We can involve other kids like you, and we can all learn together. Her eyes brightened, enraptured by the notion. Really? I would love that. Can I design the posters? Absolutely. Just like you designed this, he said, motioning toward the paper in her hands, now a bright symbol of possibility. With renewed purpose, Jake felt the fear of failure evolving into a stimulant. If he embraced collaboration, both with Jessica and now possibly with Lily, he wasn't just moving forward. He was building a legacy. Sessions with Jessica turned more productive, each meeting spiraling into brainstorming sessions filled with ideas to engage the community. Jake's confidence surged. He communicated his vision vividly, allowing her input to shape their strategy, aligning it with sustainable practices that extended beyond their trench of technology into education and advocacy. But just as he envisioned this gathering momentum, reality reared its head again. One day, Jessica emailed him with a hint of urgency. A contact in the funding world was potentially interested in their prototype, but requested an immediate pitch. He stared at her words, an icy grip around his chest. What if he faltered? Did he have it in him to stand before knowledgeable strangers and present his project, armed only with hope and the support of a little girl? As he paced the garage that evening, preparing himself, he could hear Lily's voice echoing through the carport. You're my amazing daddy. The words clashed with his self-doubt. His heart thumped as he considered the implications of the pitch ahead of him. This wasn't merely about him anymore. It was a chance to secure a financial foundation for a project that could soar beyond his imagination. But looming over him was that unmistakable question, gnawing. What if he fell short? As the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing everything in twilight, Jake took a deep breath. He needed to accept that his own vulnerability was a part of this journey, and perhaps, in that vulnerability, lay his strength. But as he closed the garage door behind him, ready to face down the gathering storm of expectations and anxieties, he found himself lingering in the doorway, gazing out into an uncertain night. The moment of truth was on the horizon. What would he say when faced with the reality of his dreams? How far would he go to shield the light of hope ignited by his daughter? The stage had been set, and everything was about to shift. Jake awoke the next morning with an urgency that sliced through the fog of sleep. He felt it in the marrow of his bones. Today was pivotal. The pitch loomed ahead like an oak tree whose roots might strangle the life out of him. But the potential shade it offered was compelling. After a hurried breakfast, he took a moment to collect himself in the garage. The sterilizer prototype stood waiting, its metal surface glinting under the overhead light. He examined it, the product of relentless late nights, countless revisions, and raw determination. It was more than just machinery. It was the embodiment of his hopes, his desires, and now, Lily's unwavering belief in him. As he ran his fingers along the device's contours, doubt seeped in again. What if he stumbled? Stories of failed entrepreneurs haunted him, their faces flickering through his mind like ominous shadows. Jake shook his head, chastising himself for entertaining such negativity. Focus, he muttered, gearing up to practice his pitch in the solitude of the garage. Each word felt like a brick, constructing a wall of competence around his self-doubt. He visualized the faces of possible investors, skeptical, analytical, expecting precision. How could he convey conviction when he sometimes struggled to embrace it himself? He took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and spoke to the prototype as though it could empathize. This is for the kids. This is for all the parents who worry about their children getting sick from waterborne diseases. His own words resonated in his chest, igniting a flicker of conviction buried beneath the layers of anxiety. After a few iterations, he began to weave in Lily's voice. He spoke about her dreams, and how a simple water sterilizer could change lives. Her unwavering belief acted as his compass, pointing toward purpose. Each word he spoke became steadier, filled with emotional weight as he explored the greater significance of his work. Hours later, an email pinged in his inbox, Jessica's reminder of their scheduled meeting. The confidence he had found while rehearsing began to slip as his thoughts raced again. He could share his progress, and yet, the fear of judgment loomed at the corner of his mind like a specter. What if she saw through his facade? After all, Jessica was more than just a business partner. She was an anchor. He trusted her critical eye, or perhaps he dreaded it. Entering the coffee shop where they had agreed to meet, Jake felt both anticipation and dread intertwining like ropes, pulling in opposite directions. "Hey, Jake, you look ready to conquer the world." Jessica greeted him, her energy infectious. The spark she carried fueled a small fire in Jake, but he couldn't shake the nervousness that sat heavy in his gut. "Thanks. Just trying to keep up." He sat, forcing a smile, a tactic to mask the internal struggle gnawing at him. They discussed logistics, but Jake felt stuck between their ambitions and the fragile reality of his fears. As he spoke about the upcoming pitch, he saw the flicker of concern dance across Jessica's face. "I believe in this project, Jake, but being honest, are you ready?" "Ready?" The question echoed in his mind. His previous certainty about what direction he was heading in began to crack, revealing deeper pools of uncertainty. "Yes, do you believe you can deliver? This could be a game changer for us," she pressed, her gaze unyielding. Jake looked away. The realization settled, weighing heavily on him. This wasn't purely about the sterilizer. It was about him too. To reveal his insecurities meant to confront his deepest fears and possibly expose failures that were simmering just beneath the surface. "Honestly," he replied, voice wavering slightly, "I'm afraid I might fail." A moment of silence enveloped them, thickened with the weight of vulnerability. It felt daring to express those words, almost unmooring, yet liberating. Jessica leaned forward, her voice low and supportive. "You have come so far, Jake. And you know something? It's okay to be scared. It just means you care about what you're doing. Just give it your all." Beneath the fear, Jake felt a hint of flame reignite. "You're right," he said, testing the resolve that had begun to form. If he faced this fear head-on, he could finally unravel what it meant to step into the role he had long avoided. A leader, a visionary, his daughter's superhero. As he left the coffee shop, the election within him was more pronounced. What of other parents, children, lives that could find improvement through his efforts? The path ahead was unclear, but clarity was beckoning him to inspire, to be inspired, to stand tall and share his truth. But with that clarity came ambivalence. Would he find the strength to carry that truth into the room, filled with seasoned investors? As he reached for the car door, Jake heard Lily's voice weaving itself into his mind once more, urging him forward. The echoes of their conversation felt like armor. Then, the question loomed ahead, sharpening his focus. How much of himself was he willing to unveil to conquer not just the pitch, but the internal battles raging within him? The moment was fast approaching. A reckoning was on the horizon. The sun hung low as Jake navigated through the late afternoon rush of traffic, his heart pounding with a mix of dread and determination. The closer he got to the pitch, the heavier the doubts crawled back into his mind, whispering taunts that echoed past failures. In the confines of his car, he gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles whitening. "Breathe," he told himself, inhaling deeply. Each exhalation felt like a release, but the nagging fear nagged at him, drumming a steady beat of insecurity. What if this was all for nothing? What if they rejected him out of hand? The pain of potential rebuff pushed him into a determination to prove those doubts wrong. This was more than a pitch. It was a chance to show Lily that dreaming big came with risks, but that striving for something meaningful mattered most. Arriving at the high-rise office building, Jake stepped out into a world that hummed with ambition and competitiveness, a stark contrast to his chaotic thoughts. The polished facade reflected not only the sky above, but also his aspirations, sharp, clear, and daunting. As he rode the elevator to the boardroom, he felt its metallic walls encroach, tightening around him like the very doubts he sought to dispel. Upon entering, he found the conference room occupied by seasoned investors, their expressions unreadable. A hush fell over the space as Jake stood before them, the prototype sterilizer cradled tightly against his side. Each face bore the weight of expectation and skepticism. He could feel their eyes like lasers, dissecting every inch of his resolve. "Thank you for taking the time to meet with me today," he began, forcing his voice to steady. "I'm here to share a vision that began with personal experience but extends far beyond me." He made a deliberate effort to ground himself, remembering Lily's face, her trust. He launched into the pitch, detailing the sterilizer, weaving statistics with heartfelt anecdotes. As he explained the technology, he could feel the audience's shifting attention, some fidgeting slightly, while others leaned in, intrigued. With every passing moment, the energy in the room seemed to pulsate, mirroring his rising confidence. Yet, even as his words flowed, a shadow of doubt whispered, what if they dismissed the idea entirely? Jake took another deep breath, channeling all his focus into the moment. This isn't just about innovation. It's about the children whose lives can change. It's about parents who can sleep easier knowing their kids are safe from preventable diseases. He glanced up to gauge their reactions. One investor appeared skeptical, arms crossed, a faint smirk dancing on his lips. The sight deflated Jake momentarily, but within that doubt sparked a sense of defiance. "I believe in this product because it reflects a commitment to something greater than profit. It's about humanity." A silence filled the room as he concluded, the weight of vulnerability hanging heavily in the air. He waited, heart racing, for their questions, their concerns, their criticism. The pit in his stomach began to settle. Finally, the skeptical investor leaned forward, his brow furrowed. "You've created something remarkable, but how do you plan to scale it?" Jake took the moment. He launched into his prepared strategy, but it now felt more than just rehearsed jargon. It felt like a dialogue. As he navigated the CEO's probing inquiries, he became acutely aware of a shift happening. He was not merely an underdog presenting an idea, he was the expert on his own creation, the voice of a deeper mission. As discussions ebbed and flowed, Jake felt more at ease, tapping into a well of passion he hadn't known he possessed. The confrontation with the investors transformed from an anxious whirl to a constructive exchange. Hours later, as he stepped out of the building, the city dusk settled around him, yet he was ignited with light. Had he navigated the choppy waters of doubt? Perhaps. But what mattered was he had shown up for himself, he had confronted the very fears that had once threatened to consume him. But would the investors see his potential? Would they decide to back a vision they may not fully understand? There remained no guarantee, but Jake felt a narrative shift within him. That night, an unexpected message woke him from restless sleep, a simple text from Jessica, mirroring his thoughts. "You were amazing today. Just wait and see what happens." Uncertainty brewed, but for the first time, it felt like opportunity rather than dread. He contemplated the path ahead. Facing his fears was only the beginning. As he scrolled through potential responses, a wild thought surfaced. What if he arranged one more meeting? With determination burning brightly, he typed, "Let us present this together." Jake's heart raced with the thirst for collaboration. After all, why should he face the daunting uncertainty alone? Tomorrow, he would reclaim the narrative of his journey, not just as a father trying to prove himself, but as a leader willing to risk everything for his dreams. As he tucked Lily in, her soft breaths soothed his burning ambition. Little did he know, a critical imbalance in his business partnerships was lurking just beneath the surface, waiting to reveal itself. Could he handle another confrontation? Or would this one threaten everything he had built thus far? The sun streaked through the curtains as Jake awoke to a new day. The previous night's ambition still coursed through him, igniting every cell of his being. He stretched, drawing in a deep breath, ready to forge ahead once more. Today was not merely about another pitch. It felt like a pivotal moment in his evolution from uncertainty to solidarity in pursuit of his dreams. Seated at the kitchen table with an untouched cup of coffee, Jake contemplated the meeting he planned. Collaboration with Jessica felt invigorating, but there lingered an undercurrent of concern. After all, he hadn't fully assessed how her involvement might reshape the dynamics he had carefully constructed. They had been partners at one point, but their paths diverged. In seeking partnership, would he inadvertently reignite past tensions? He leaned back, running his fingers through his hair. Perhaps the biggest hurdle was his own ability to bridge the gap between past grievances and potential future triumphs. Taking a deep breath, he reminded himself that vulnerability could be a strength, not a weakness. To confront his fears of revisiting old scars was to embrace authenticity, especially if he aimed to reshape his narrative as a father and a professional. As the clock ticked forward, he prepared his proposal with renewed fervor. Every bullet point was more than ambition. It was a reflection of the father he hoped to be for Lily, a man who valued collaboration over isolation, hope over despair. What if this newly forged partnership with Jessica unearthed hidden capabilities of both participants, fostering an environment where each could shine? Once he arrived at the office, he was greeted by the lingering scent of fresh paint, a metaphorical rebirth of sorts. With each step toward Jessica's workspace, he felt the rising tide of nervous energy. Would she remember the shared dreams, the candid laughter, and the vision they once had? Or would the sharp edges of their past undermine the hope for collaboration? "Hey, Jake," she greeted, looking up from her laptop, her expression a blend of professional reserve and cautious enthusiasm. "I got your message. Are you sure about this?" He swallowed the lump forming in his throat, transformed by the passion that had brought him to this point. "Absolutely. I think we have the potential to change lives together. Your insights could elevate this project to heights I couldn't reach alone. It's about nurturing something meaningful outside of our past." As he spoke, a wave of conviction washed over him. A realization began to unfold. He could transform this meeting into the example he wished to set for Lily, illustrating the power of teamwork, respect, and the importance of trusting in others. As discussions progressed, he found himself actively listening to Jessica, inviting her thoughts with open arms. She offered perspectives that surprised him, enhancing his vision with layers of complexity he had overlooked. Their dialogue evolved into a dance of ideas, reflecting a newfound balance he hadn't anticipated. Despite the shadows of their history, a level of trust began to blossom, and with it, a shared determination to realize their vision. However, amid the camaraderie, the nagging realization hung like a storm cloud above. A delicate balance existed. The weight of their partnership relied on each other's accountability. One crack in their united front could jeopardize everything they were trying to build, and that thought sent Jake spiraling into uncertainty. By the time the brainstorming session concluded, possibilities loomed larger than the clouds outside. He had rediscovered the agency that collaboration could yield, but the lurking doubts still needed confrontation. What unforeseen complications might arise from sharing responsibility? Just as he was gathering his notes, a message dinged on his phone. It was from one of the investors, and the preview made his heart race. "Can we dive deeper into the market strategy?" With that simple inquiry, Jake felt the pressure tightening, once more a clear signal that the road ahead would require even greater tenacity. Collaborating with Jessica had inspired new hope, but would it be enough to silence the doubts gnawing at the edges of his aspirations? He glanced at Jessica, determination igniting in his chest. This was not just about him anymore. This journey demanded resilience and fortitude from both of them. As they prepared for the next meeting, his mind raced with not only the immediate future but a daunting question. Could he truly unite their strengths and rise above the shadows of their past? Tomorrow would present the opportunity to embrace both the unknown and the familiar, but whether they could confront the larger challenges ahead loomed heavy in the air. As he left the meeting, determination anchored him, but was it enough to steer the ship through troubled waters that threatened to capsize them? The collision with reality was imminent, and Jake understood that each step he took would carry both risk and reward. That night, Jake lay in bed wide awake, wrestling with the weight of expectation. The glow of his phone illuminated the darkened room as he replayed the day's events. Jessica's insights had lit a fire within him, yet the dread of failure flickered ominously in the background. He had always been the one who took sole responsibility, and now, with Jessica alongside him, the stakes felt impossibly higher. As he stared at the ceiling, he recalled Lily's laughter earlier that day. The thought alone pushed him to confront his fears. He wanted to show her that strength didn't just come from solitude. It also flourished in collaboration. But would he falter? Would their partnership fall apart at the first sign of trouble? What if the past echoes came back to haunt him? He rose with the dawn, an uneasy resolution stirring within. The morning light glinted off his reflection in the bathroom mirror. A new day promised fresh opportunities, but he felt the creeping possibility of his inadequacy. Arriving at the office, Jake sought solace in routine. Starting up his laptop, he quickly glanced at his notes, but they felt foreign, like a reminder of his tenuous hold on the situation. He needed a strategy, one that was not only about driving the proposal home, but also about solidifying their partnership. It was clear now that his success hinged not only on his ability to pitch ideas, but on fostering a genuine collaboration. He found Jessica reviewing designs on her tablet, her brow furrowed in concentration. The sight rekindled his optimism. "Morning," he said, trying to infuse his voice with enthusiasm. "Ready to dive into the market strategy?" "Absolutely," she replied, the earlier hesitation melting away. "But we need to think critically. What are our strengths? How can we maximize each other's expertise?" As they discussed their different perspectives, Jake was acutely aware of every word exchanged. They transcended mere brainstorming. It was a rapport built on honesty, but he felt the foundational cracks still present, a constant reminder of their shared past. "Jake, let us lay it all on the table," Jessica prompted, her eyes locking onto his. "We can't afford to tiptoe around unresolved issues. There's too much at stake." He hesitated, but knew she was right. The transparency must flow both ways. "You know, when we were partners before, I was too focused on the end goal to really consider what mattered in between," he confessed. "We worked well together back then, but I was always afraid of my own shortcomings being revealed. It became easier to drive things on my own." Her gaze softened, absorbing his honesty. "I get that. I was afraid of us getting too caught up in past grievances instead of moving forward. But if we're to do this together, we need to view our past as experience rather than baggage." The room pulsed with tension, mingled with the thrill of raw authenticity. This exchange felt like a revelation. Their strength lay not only in their skills, but also in their ability to confront the truth of their partnership. He felt a tight knot inside him begin to loosen, replaced by a budding resolve. Their collaboration continued to flourish, ideas branching out like a tree, each conversation becoming more vibrant and productive. Yet, deep down, the worry remained. A voice whispered that this newfound synergy could still crumble under the weight of expectations that others, including investors, had placed upon them. The meeting with the investors loomed on the horizon, and he could feel the pressure rising yet again. Each moment spent developing the project felt like a bet against time, a test of whether he could truly rely on Jessica or whether doubt would, as it had before, disrupt their progression. As Jake prepared for the pitch, he caught a glimpse of himself in the reflection of a glass wall. He was struck by the palpable difference in his demeanor. But as those reassuring thoughts settled in, the familiar anxiety crept back, a reminder of fragile triumphs. Jessica approached, a playful smile tugging at her lips. "We'll be fine," she said, firm in her conviction. "We're not just partners in this project. We're building something stronger. Trust the process." But just as the last vestiges of confidence settled in, another message popped up on Jake's phone. "We need to finalize our commitment. What if the investors aren't as impressed?" His heart raced, the uncertainty spilling back in. This wasn't merely about a pitch anymore. It was about dismantling the fears that had previously overcome him. He took a deep breath, clenching his fist, and realized he had to face these challenges head-on, spread his wings, and navigate through the tumult. Tomorrow held the key to their future collaboration, but the internal battle for trust and accountability raged on. Was he ready to fully intertwine their paths, to disrupt the pattern of his isolation? The moment of confrontation drew near, and he now recognized the discomfort as an essential ally. As he settled in for a restless night, the question remained: could he navigate this journey without allowing fear to seize control once more? The next day broke with a sense of obligation compelling Jake to push past his fears. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting warmth into the room, awakening a promise that today would mark a turning point. As he prepared for the pitch presentation, every detail loomed larger in his mind: the investors, the stakes, but most importantly, the investment in resilience he sought to showcase through the solar water sterilizer. When he arrived at the office, his mind was a jumble of strategies and statistics. He could feel the pressing anticipation buzzing in the air as he approached Jessica. Her calm demeanor was infectious, fueling his own nerves with a sliver of confidence. "Ready to nail this?" she asked, giving him an encouraging pat on the back. "Absolutely. A little anxious, but ready," Jake admitted. He was resonating with the notion that they were now partners, not just in the project, but in their own stories of growth and redemption. As they stepped into the conference room, Jake's heart drummed in his chest, setting the pace for what felt like both an adventure and a test. The sleek boards around them reflected the serious intent of the investors, who were waiting to assess not just a product, but their potential. "Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity," he started, easing into the presentation, recalling the warmth of Lily's belief in him, the spark of wanting to make a difference. He launched into their pitch, sharing the urgency of the problem they aimed to tackle with the solar sterilizer, emphasizing the human connections embedded in the data. Each statistic was anchored by the faces of children like his daughter, faces that would benefit from access to clean water. He put forth their passion for sustainability intertwined with innovative engineering, unearthing the purpose they encapsulated through this device. Jake's voice grew steadier as he spoke. Drawing on the expertise he and Jessica had pulled together, he showcased projections for community engagement that surpassed mere commercialization. The investors leaned in as he spoke, drawn by the authenticity radiating from both him and Jessica. They faced challenging questions, but Jake felt himself rising to the occasion. "Scaling is more than just about numbers. It's about partnership," he articulated, now more succinct and concise. "We aim to build relationships with local organizations to adapt and evolve as we learn from those we aim to serve." As the discussions unfolded, he could sense a shift. They were not just evaluating a project, but were also engaged in an exchange of values. Jake embraced their skepticism and turned it into momentum, confirming that ideas held merit not just in boardrooms, but in homes and communities. After what felt like an eternity of strategic dialogue, they concluded the pitch. The room exhaled, an electrifying sense of potential sparking in the silence that followed. As he stepped away, Jake felt lighter, unburdened by the weight of anticipated judgment. He and Jessica had woven something real together. When they received the decision, a commitment to support their project, a wave of relief washed over Jake. He turned to Jessica, who wore a grin that matched his disbelief. He had pushed through the veil of doubt, not just for himself, but for the embodiment of hope he had created with Lily. He realized his growth had shaped him into a leader capable of navigating complex waters, understanding that vulnerability could bolster alliance rather than threaten it. Later that evening, at home, Jake was met by Lily's eager smile as she bounced into his arms. "You did it, Papa," she exclaimed, her joy infectious. In that moment, he understood the journey was about more than inventions. It was about carving out a space for dreams amidst adversity, and he had done just that. "Together, we're going to help so many people," he affirmed, his voice steady with newfound confidence. As he watched her, he knew he had not only transformed his own life and career, but had also planted the seeds for a legacy that extended beyond personal triumph. A legacy fueled by love, resilience, and a steadfast commitment to empower those around him. As he tucked Lily in that night, a deep sense of fulfillment settled within him. He had conquered not just the skepticism outside, but the fears that once held him captive. With every ounce of his being, Jake had proven himself not merely as a mechanic, but as an innovator, a father, and a man who would stop at nothing to represent the boundless potential of dreams, both his own and those who would look up to him. Now it was time for others to witness this transformation, to inspire more like him to step forward. Therefore, you need to subscribe now to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like right now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this conclusion, and share this video immediately with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful journey of overcoming. You will make a difference. Don't wait even one more second to support the community of personal growth.